version. We're going to watch the '05 version, 2005, and here's some differences. Let me, hold on. I don't think that's all whistle. I think this part is whistle. And then she goes down to like this super, super, super light head voice, which is not a great term. Head voice, falsetto, and all that stuff is not actually like good descriptive terminology, but I guess for our purposes, this is whistle. And then you can hear that the whistle, we don't know much about whistle, as a matter of fact. It's very, very hard to examine the larynx during whistle register because there's so little space. What we do know is that the folds will have this little hole in them, akin to when you whistle with your lips, right? And so that's where the whistle happens. Now, what that means is that there's going to be a little bit of air escaping, like there would be if you whistle, right? You can feel it. So the reason why I don't think the last note is whistle is because that hiss that says that we're letting air out goes away. Check it out. You hear how that pretty much goes away entirely? And so if that's the case, which I think it is, what we're witnessing is somebody like sculpting the tone of their whistle to blend into a different part of the register. Now, register blending is just part of singing. You know, so it's not usually something that I would pause and call attention to, but she's doing it off a whistle. And that's crazy town. I love this. Listen to her consonants here. That K, that kind, hits with the kick drum. Sweet destiny carried me through desperation. There have been a lot of folks that have told me Mariah Carey is at her best in the 90s. And I think that's unfair. She is known for doing a lot of vocal gymnastics, but the thing that happens when you get older is that your folds will grow in the same way that your nose doesn't stop growing, first of all. And second of all, I'm pretty sure she had her kid by this point, and the hormone changes that happen in a woman when they go through childbirth makes the voice significantly larger in most cases. So what Mariah has done in her career by writing these insanely difficult technical pieces of music that her fans expect her to sing is that she actually has had to become like this master of her voice all over again in order to be able to hit the same notes that she used to. Because her voice is literally larger. And so because it's larger, the range is not as high, but she navigates it brilliantly. And I don't think she gets enough credit for that. It's a different voice that she's working with in the 90s. It's not necessarily better or worse. And so what we hear is a dramatic change in this mid-range where she's singing the same song. Go look at the 95 one and go listen to this. The way that she is lush in the mid totally changes in this one. Inspiration to the one that was waiting for me. It took so long, still I believe. Oh, I love when she does that. She just throws in that little crack there. Still I believe. It's just so cool. I've known some singers who have literally practiced their scales on cracks. And as a classically trained singer, you basically train that out of your voice entirely. And I'm jelly.
Still I believe somehow the one that I needed would find me eventually.
I love this little run she does here. It's so quick.
Would find
Do 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 do. I think it's an arpeggio. Hold on. Sorry, I'm just talking about it.
would find
Either way, it's a really quick run. Really cool.
me eventually. I had a vision of love, and it was all that you've given to me. Yeah.
Another thing that's interesting is that in this performance, she's using a lot of thyroid tilt, which will add lusciousness to the sound.
And it was all that you've given to me. Yeah.
And you can tell just in listening to these notes that like what 10 years and a child has done to her voice. This is a bigger sound. It is a warmer sound.
I pray through the night, feel so.
That crackling, hold on.
I pray through the night.
I'm not sure if that's intentional. It doesn't sound like a fry. A fry would be intentional.
I pray through the night, feel so alone.
I'm not sure if that has to do with maybe the nodules there. Either way, what's cool is that she's the crackling aside, you can tell that she's adding what are called the false folds into this equation. So her belts are almost always very, very, very crisp, very, very clean, very, very effortless, unless she wants to put false fold contraction in there. So if you have your false folds apart, you'll get the AM radio voice. And then if they're neutral, that's very conversational. And in rock and roll, you put them together sometimes. And so there's this whole range of motion to them. And if you want to sound a little gritty in your higher note, you can actually bring them together a smidge. Now, the difficulty with that is it's way less efficient to sing the closer the false folds get together. So what she's doing there, in order to make up for that, she has to be way more precise with her breath.
And it was all that you've given to me. Yeah. I pray through the night.
And you can tell it's on purpose, the contraction of the false folds, because she doesn't start the belt with it. The start of the belt is very clean.
I pray through the night.
It's almost like pristine. And this is something that I always get dumbfounded whenever I do Mariah Carey analysis, is that like her belts are insanely clean, like which requires an insane amount of breath control, because the folds are so fat when you belt that if you have too much air, they just kind of like slap together. And usually the way that the body protects against excessive air is the false folds will contract. So, but the fact that they're contracting and she's not going flat is demonstrative of two things. One, it's intentional. Two, she's got her breath on lock.
Feel so alone, suffered from alienation. Oh, I carried the weight on my own.
The difference here, they might have thrown on more compression in later performances. It's hard to know. But the reason I bring it up is because proximity effect, which is when you get closer to the mic. That's me with a low roll-off, by the way. I have an EQ that cuts off the low end of my mic. So, and I'm sure she has the same because she has a drum kit. But anyway.
Suffered from alienation. Oh, I carried the weight on my own.
in the 95 performance, when she goes down, and this is true of her 90s performances in general, when she does the proximity effect, in addition to the pursing of the lip, to give her a richer low, it sounds like in some of those instances, it's as low as she goes, and you basically have to use those two tricks in order to be audible. That's not the case here. And I'm not taking shots at her in the 90s versus herself. I'm just saying, I'm pointing out the differences in her voice.
Oh, I carried the weight on my own.
That lower note is more present than it was in the 90s. And I just always see in the comment sections, Mariah was at her best, not recently and not in the 2000s, it was the 90s. And I just think that that's not true or fair. People's voices change, and there's different qualities now than there were, and the control is still completely stellar.
Had to be strong, so I believe, and now I know I've succeeded in finding the place I conceived. I had a vision of love, and it was all that you've given to me.
I love these little growls that she's doing, these little vocal fries, starting on the low and going up. It's actually really good if you're learning to sing and you're struggling with certain parts of your range. If you start on a fry, right, the lower you go, that fry means your folds are very relaxed. So if you go up, your folds will be like just as close together as they need to be. But it's also cool to do for effect.
So I believe, and
right? Just that little bit. I don't know. It's just like, it's a cool sound on the beginning of and. Right? You can hear the between the folds, and it's just cool.
I know I've succeeded in finding the place I conceived. I had a vision of love, and it was all that you've given to me. I had a vision of love.
The way that she maneuvers, it's so funny. Like, you'd think that vocal nodules and vocal damage would like hold a singer back. Oftentimes, like, especially in classical music, vocal damage is treated like a death sentence. Like, just don't get it is the solution that a lot of people have. Like, just don't get it. Oh, you had it. I don't know what's going to happen to you. But if you listen to how she will let breathiness in and out, and the different tactics that she uses to negotiate those things.
I had a vision of love, and it was all that you've given to me. I had a vision of love.
The way that she flips up here in love, she lets this breathiness in.
I had a vision of love.
And then immediately it's gone.
Vision of love.
And so I can only surmise that she's intentionally like flipped her folds open, or that she's singing with the nodules itself, like the nodules are touching, which would mean that the rest of the folds are open, because nodules are a protrusion on the folds, right? So if they're touching, that means other parts of the folds are not. But like the mastery to flip into that versus not, it's not falsetto, which is another airy sound, but it would be the separation of the vocal folds to them being flipped up. And there's a whole range of motion of connection versus not connection. But the level of breathiness here with the thickness of the tone, I think to me means that she's actually connecting her nodules and then bringing it off, which is insane to think, because the vocal folds for a woman are the size of a dime. So you can imagine like these small little protrusions on the dime that she's just able to kind of bring in and out. I think that's what's happening, and it's just incredible.
And it was all that you've given to me. I had a vision of love.
Like, that's mind-boggling.
And it was all that you've given me. I realized a dream.
This dream thing is definitely, it's like going up higher than the love. And this is why I think that the breathiness on love was intentional. This is pretty much full vocal closure here. Right? There's not an ounce of breathiness.
Oh yeah.
And now there is.
And I visualize the love that came to me. Feels so alive.
I think she's doing it on the low. I think that's what's happening on the low. The same, like her, like I think the nodules are contacting or in contact with each other. It might just be a straight whisper. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Feels so alive. I'm so thankful that I received the answer that heaven has sent down to me. 'Cause you're treating me kind.
Dang, that's aggressive mic technique.
The answer that heaven has sent down.
So sometimes, and this happens, I went to an opera performance once where someone was playing Lady Macbeth, and her folds were dry in and out, so it sounded like there was some frying going on. If she's dry here, there's nothing she can do about that crackling without taking a break and getting some water.
That I received the answer that heaven.
There's just a little bit of frying there.
That heaven has sent down to me. 'Cause you're treating me kind.
Dang. Go listen to her belts in 95. Go listen to them here and compare. The power, the difference is so noticeable. She's just got more voice to work with here. It's just bigger.
'Cause you're treating me kind.
Also, that mic technique is kind of fun. Do 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 do.
Sweet destiny, and I'll be eternally grateful, holding you so close to me, straight through the night, so faithfully.
Okay. Always with Mariah, there's like, I can pause at like any point and like extract like 8 different things that she's doing.
Holding you so close to me.
There's a point here where she's going to do glottals, which is the folds coming together and stopping together, which creates this sort of interesting sound. That. Listen to this here. So what she's doing there is the folds are coming in and out on the same breath. And that's I guess you'd call that vocal onset, how the notes start. And that actually takes a lot of control. Particularly to do it where every note sounds very even, because the risk of using glottals like this is that the longer you hold the vocal folds together like that, the more pressure builds up. The more pressure builds up, the louder the note, right? Listen to how even each note is. She's even bringing it back a little bit on that second to last note because it's going lower. And then she goes immediately to the growl. I mean, there's just gymnastics going on here. Give this woman a gold medal.
Just going the one that I need, would find me eventually, yeah. I had a vision of love, and it was all that you're giving to me. I had a vision of love.
And this is why I think it's just so crazy people give her crud. Do you hear the difference in how much power she has here?
And it was all that you're giving to me. I had a vision of love, and it was all.
She's just got so much oomph. Now she goes up here and it she stops it abruptly, because I think she knew and could identify that if she sustained this higher note, it wouldn't go well. So, being wise and smart and so technically savvy, she walks away from it. She pulls back on it. right? Boom, cuts it off. Now, maybe if she's younger, that's not so difficult because, again, everything is smaller. But people like to point out in Mariah's later years that she can't do the things as easily as she did. But let's be clear. The fact that she can still do them at all is insane. Opera singers, when they have kids, often just stop singing the roles that they used to. I mean, full on stop. Some of them even go way more dramatic. She is singing these tunes that she wrote when she had a different voice and still sings them in the same key and does everything that she can to maintain that because that's what her fans want. So she's incredibly generous as a performer just on that alone. But it's also technically phenomenal that she can do this.
And it was
I mean, that's just nuts.
that
Okay, let's look at the mic technique here, how she waves it a bit to get the dynamic control. That's because, you know, with the mouth closed on the lower end, there is only so much dynamic control you can have vocally. So she's using mic technique to get some decrescendo effects, which is making it softer. Look at the mic technique. Contrast that with what she does next, which she gets very close to the microphone and it basically eats the microphone with her lips to get the most robust low that she could possibly achieve.
Take your time with it.
that you turn out to.
I love that she just knows she has the audience in her fingertips. Okay, how much did the drummer give her back on the intro? That timing is insane. That they're together on when she hits the consonant B. That's just nuts. The gymnastics there is just crazy.